Okay, welcome everyone. My name is David Gazzarotto and I'll be co-presenting today's webinar, which is entitled Delivering Business Value Using Oracle User Productivity Kit. I'm very pleased to be able to present today's webinar in conjunction with Oracle, and I have James Hull from Oracle joining me, and I'll introduce him shortly. We still have a few people yet to join us, but I will make a start, and hopefully those people will join us in the next little while. Thanks for giving up your time, whether that's during your lunch break here in Australia. I know there's some people who have registered from other parts of the world too, so we appreciate you coming along to attend the session today. Our agenda for today really is to get across a number of things. I know the term user adoption is probably not unfamiliar for most of you, but we will start with just talking about the case for user adoption and how user adoption can really deliver the business value for your implementation or upgrade of particularly the large enterprise systems we all tend to deal with. Then we're going to spend some time looking at how Oracle UPK, the User Productivity Kit, supports the whole project lifecycle. So one of the key takeaways that I want everyone to have out of today's session is to see that UPK is not just a training tool, it's got a lot more to offer than that. So we're going to show you some ways in which that will come to life in terms of the content today. Having James with us enables me to bring some of the UPK to life. So essentially James is going to do some demos of three of the key features that we think are really a great way of adding value across the whole life cycle. And those are the Record It feature, the Test It feature, and the Knowledge Center, which is available in the UPK Pro. So James will show us a little bit of, take us for a tour around the product with some real life examples. And I'm going to bring some of our own customer experience to show how that's come to life with the trends that we're seeing in the customers that we're working with at Future Knowledge. And then we'll close up with whatever time is remaining. If there are any questions or an opportunity for discussion, I will endeavour to open the lines up, but I will say that given everyone's quite time poor, particularly in the middle of the day, if we don't get much time for any questions or to entertain some discussion, please use I think you'll find the right-hand side of this GoToWebinar. You'll have a control panel, and if you haven't used this format before, you are able to ask questions of the presenters either through the chat window or the question window on that right-hand control panel. So we're probably not going to be able to pause the webinar to take a question, but if you have one, please put that forward, and we will endeavour to get them at the end. If we don't, we will send out some responses to all the attendees so you can get the answers to those questions. Okay, so just a little bit of housekeeping before I get started on this. We do have quite a number of attendees on here, so as I say, I've got everyone muted, so we hopefully will keep the lines fairly clear. We will also be transferring presenters from me using Slideware and James, who will be going into some product demo. We'll ensure that we try and do that in a way that that doesn't interrupt the session so much. In terms of timings, we expect to have this webinar completed well within the hour that we've scheduled for it, so thanks again for attending. So just a quick review of who's presenting. So I'm David Gazzarotto, and I work for a company called Future Knowledge, and if you haven't heard of us before, we are one of the leading specialist consultancies in the area of user adoption and change management for large ERP rollouts, and we've certainly got a long history in working with Oracle, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, a number of other solutions, particularly bringing tools like UPK into the to help with the people side of technology rollouts and implementations. I'm joined by James Hole, who he may be on mute. Hello, James.
Thanks. Thanks, David, and welcome everybody. And I'm part of the Oracle pre-sales organisation based out of Melbourne, and I certainly spend a fair bit of time using the UPK tool. So thanks,
Great.
David.
Thanks, James. So just before we start, in case you haven't had an exposure to Future Knowledge, and this is the only plug that I'm going to do for the whole session, thank you very much. We are, as I said, a specialist consultancy. We do focus on primarily on user adoption, change management for workforce technology deployments. We're increasingly getting involved now, though, in what the cloud is bringing to the table, and we're still seeing a lot of demand and for the sorts of services we bring around user adoption. It's not just the on-premises world that requires assistance in this area. We were established back in 2005, so we've got a strong track record now of supporting quite a lot of customers, some of which you see on the page there, and we're well over 120 successful projects now across 50 or more of some of the best known companies in Australia and New Zealand. So if we haven't had the opportunity to work with you to date, I'm sure we will at some stage in the future. And we're a relationship with Oracle. We're an Oracle Gold partner, which certainly enables us access to a lot more depth of knowledge and insight from within Oracle, and that relationship's very important in terms of being able to add a lot more value to our customers. And particularly around UPK, we're able to resell the UPK solution, which means that rather than just provide content development services or strategy consulting around it, we can work with you on building an entire end-to-end solution around UPK, and you can do that with working with us without having to go through multiple relationships with other vendors and partners. So, just wanted to start our session today with a bit of a perspective, I guess, on user adoption. Now, I think if we were all in a room and I asked people to tell me what they thought user adoption was, I think everyone now would have an answer. Perhaps 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, a third of the room might be able to have given us some sort of a definition. But I guess user adoption tends to be perceived as being synonymous with training and end-user training, particularly around technology projects. So whilst that's certainly an element of what user adoption is about, what I want to do is just give us a little bit more, a broader framework within which to define user adoption, and particularly as it pertains to adding business value. And one of the things that I like to the analogy I like to use with user adoption, I guess with any in relation to the adoption of technology, it's kind of like teaching someone to drive. And if any of you have ever had to try and teach a learner driver, you realise that you can't just chuck the manual at them and ask them to read it and go away and do it. There's a whole bunch of context and different types of instructions required, different types of knowledge that needs to be imparted to ensure that they're able to effectively take those skills on and apply them in real life. So I see user adoption in a very similar way. So one of the takeaways that I really want to leave you with is that user adoption is not just about go-live training, and it's really about taking a much broader approach to user engagement and endeavouring to connect users throughout the project life cycle and beyond. I mean, I think there's a very strong role for user adoption in the BAU context as well. And one of the things that I think is also very important is that we're not just about providing content. It's not just about providing the user documentation or the steps on a process. We need to provide the context as well, so that our end users are able to not just use the system but understand why they would do certain tasks at certain times and how that aligns with their own role in doing their jobs. So why is it important? I think some of these things are fairly obvious. If user adoption is done well, what we tend to find, it results in a greater awareness of the solution that's going to be adopted. It also drives motivation, so we can find that the willingness for people to take on the new behaviours, to go and develop skills and take those on, is increased by having a very well executed user adoption strategy. And what it also does is it provides reinforcement of the knowledge and behaviours that are required. So we can find multiple ways of really reinforcing that learning and I guess the skills acquisition, and put it into the context of why the organisation is looking to drive the transformation that's associated with that technology deployment. And the bottom line, really, those last 2 points on this slide are bottom line stuff that your CFO really is most interested in. We want to ensure we drive increased ROI. That's a statement that's been bandied around a lot over a lot of years. But most business cases are firmly attached to productivity increases, or definitely people-related elements. And so if we can accelerate the adoption of technology and get people confident and effective in the use, then it stands to reason we'll drive increased accelerated ROI, and also in doing so reduce the risk of project failure. Just in terms of further framing user adoption, it's probably worthwhile us just exploring what is an end user. And I've just got a little journey I want to take you through in the evolution of the end user, and that puts it into context in terms of how we need to focus differently now from perhaps in the past. And this first the early days of computer users were very much expert boffins in front of a row of PCs. You see that picture there of a gentleman computer expert in the 1960s. As we moved into the early PC days, into the 1980s, we found that using technology, using computers was very much taken out of those back rooms and into the hands of the super administrator. And then through the 2000s, as the internet became more prevalent, and we developed better devices for portability and to take computing away from the desktop so much, we found that the end user is becoming more and more broadly defined in organisations as most of us started to access productivity tools and business systems in our day-to-day lives. To today, where we've got multi-devices and where mobility rules, but as you can see from this picture of my rather cheeky 3-year-old Max, who happened to discover or I discovered him hacking into my iPad recently, which he managed to do with a swipe of the finger and a couple of taps of a code that he must have watched me do a few thousand times. And lo and behold, he was in there and starting to open applications up. And I think that's what that's saying to us is that the end user now is becoming much more demanding in terms of what they need. They're using computers in a lot of aspects of their lives now. They're connected at their desk, at home, on the road. They run their life on the internet now. And rather than just seeing technology as nice to have, it's really the necessary enabler in all facets of their job. And in terms of what they expect when they're finding out how to do things, help or even training, there's a lot more self-service now. So I know myself, if I'm stuck trying to work something out, be it a Windows program or Salesforce.com or something like that, the first place I tend to go is Google and just do a Google search on how do I locate a customer record. And for me, I find that quite often the quickest way to get information. So we're very adept now at navigating and getting to information. So consequently, we're becoming much more demanding of not just the tools that we work with in our in the corporate life. We want them to be much more like the tools that we're using in the other areas of our life. But we also want, we're becoming much more demanding about how we get access to assistance and training. Now, as much as the vendors and Oracle and others are investing a lot in innovation and trying to bring user experience closer to the Facebooks and other common tools that we all love in our perhaps our personal spheres, there's still an element of business systems requiring compliance and organisational elements that are going to compel users to do things in certain ways. And it's because of that, no matter how well we do it, enhancing and innovating on the end user interface and the user experience, there's still going to be a need to help users get engaged and understand the context of why they're using these business systems. And I guess that, to me, is what defines user adoption. It's not as straightforward as saying let's just train people on how to use a system. It's really looking at a whole multiple of ways in which we connect people to knowledge and context for them to be effective users of these business systems. A couple of business challenges that are also impacting the need for, I guess, more focus and better tools to support user adoption. And I won't go through all of these, but you can see that we've got impacts that are impressing upon the use of enterprise applications, be they in the macroeconomic sense, be it within organisations where we're trying to do more with less resource and less budget. But we've also got factors like disparate communications and workforce that's not located at their desks as much as they were 10, 20 years ago. So we've got to find ways to address that audience in more direct fashion through multiple ways, multiple channels. And in terms of the other aspect of what I wanted to cover off today is looking at UPK, particularly in the context of the project lifecycle. And I just thought I'd put a very simplified view of a typical waterfall style project lifecycle. And you can see from that colourful diagram on the right hand side of this slide that we've got those typical phases that you find in a project. I'm going to use those as a bit of a frame of reference as we go through some of the discussion shortly. And what we've typically found in the projects that we've worked in is that user adoption usually commences in the lead up to the test phase. So actually connecting users to elements of the solution comes so late in the piece that realistically that user input is not really of any value to the project, and it quite often comes quite late to be as effective as it might be. And it's typical for us to start building and developing a training program in that sort of design build phase as well. Of course, increasingly we're moving away from these waterfall style methodologies into more agile approaches, and I think personally that just impresses upon us more need to have better tools to capture knowledge assets throughout that life cycle and look for better ways to streamline our engagement with users along the way. For those of you that do not know what Oracle UPK is and have joined this this session to even find that much out, this is just a quick reminder. Really what Oracle User Productivity Kit, UPK, is about is providing a repository for recording and editing assets, knowledge assets that are take the form of screen, so simulations of processes and steps in an application, system process steps and other contextual material, being able to bring that into one repository and then push that out into multiple formats to be used in different ways, be they training guides and for classroom training, multi-mode application simulations that are used in conjunction with other training techniques or as a way of bringing online tutorials and learning materials, and also into system process documents and associated job aids, as well as things like test scripts for user acceptance and the like. So that's just a little reminder of what's very broadly encompassed within UPK, and we're going to explore some more specific elements of that shortly. And in terms of where UPK fits into the project lifecycle, this is actually an Oracle. Those of you that have seen some of Oracle's collateral around UPK may have seen this diagram, and what that's representing is, again, this single recording to put into a repository in the centre, and then use multiple outputs throughout the entire software lifecycle. So I won't go through each and every one of those, but we're going to focus today on 3 key elements of this, where we're seeing some really good value right now, and that is pushing these things out into test it mode, and using UPK to really drive the testing phase of your projects, and then using the Knowledge Centre wrapper to deploy multiple types of training instructional material out to the end users in a really nice self-service LMS manner. So that's just a couple of ways in which we can take what are really critical knowledge assets for the project that I know those of us that have worked on projects know that they are big generators of documentation. There's hardly a step or a task that goes by on a project that doesn't have some requirements document, specification document, testing scripts, all manner of other process documents, and there's literally reams of paper that's produced on these projects, and I really see UPK as a way of streamlining that, and a way of getting away from having these multiple different types of deliverables that are produced on a project that quite often don't live beyond the project lifecycle itself. And this next slide kind of talks to that in terms of being able to put into practice what I've just suggested by using UPK to capturing best practices early in the cycle, using that to build documents on system process and business procedures, use those to drive the test scripts, and then record and document what happens during the testing, and input that into some of the other materials. So we're constantly creating a knowledge base that is going to be used, and not just for the project itself, where it really has a lot of application, but then as a tool for transitioning users to go live and into business as usual context. And what I wanted to just quickly show you is a diagram. This is actually something that it's a bit of a messy diagram, but this is actually a construct that we've created with one of our clients, and we're in the process of this being delivered right now, and I'm going to use this as a bit of a frame of reference now, as James shows you some of the demos of these tools in action. And what this content development approach we did at this client, and this is a large public sector organisation who rolling out e-business, Oracle e-business, HCM, with quite a strong, about 3,000 employees will be affected by it, and quite a lot of core users, about 300 to 400 core users as well. So not an unusual scenario that I'm sure many of you have encountered or have going on in your organisations right now. And the challenge is always, how do we create all these multiple deliverables that are used, some of them for training and instruction, some of them for user support, and some of them for doing the testing and I guess other knowledge-related activities on the project. And what we designed was really what we're calling the content library, and that's built with UPK, and been really successful in having not just UPK experts, but actual project team functional experts on the product, and also importantly the business reps and subject matter experts, who are actually, rather than sitting alongside UPK developer and guiding the UPK developer through a process, then they go away and capture it. The SMEs themselves have been able to now create the captures and put those in the content library as early in the project as they possibly can, and then we've got some expertise that is then used to do a bit of tidy up, to turn those content objects into elements that can be drawn out and published in other formats, and we're seeing some real success with that. It's streamlined a lot of the documentation development. It has added a lot of value to the testing phases, which have been very iterative so far and have required lots of retest and retest. And by bringing users into that testing earlier through UPK, that's been a really effective way of getting through that program more efficiently and to have more quality in that approach. So this really is a way of just introducing a more holistic approach to using UPK. I'm going to draw out some other customer experience as we go through some of the demos shortly. But what I want to do now is hand over to James, and we'll just transition because James is going to do some actual live demos for us. So I will hand the mantle over to James now to take us through the recording wizard feature, which is a new feature in 11.1 and really does help to connect with the SMEs to the content. James, on that note, I should hand that over to you.
Thank you indeed, Michael. So this is actually a fairly new feature with version 11.1. It really enables, I guess, the more the subject matter expert type person to be able to create content, and you really are able to create content very quickly and very easily. So what I thought I might do is just use Google Maps there as a quick example and just go through a very simple capture. So you've got your little 6-step process there with the recorded, and what I'm going to do next is go and create a new topic and click the next button. So it really is a bouncing ball, no real knowledge is required approach to creating content. So just going to give it a heading, my name, again whatever you need to there, click the next button. What it does next is takes me into a record mode, and that's just a resolution thing that popped up there. But that record little bar on the top right hand side there is really the mechanism of which I'm going to start recording. And what it's telling me there is actually to click on the print screen once I want to start recording. So I get myself ready, and I'm simply just going to go off and start my recording process, and you should hear a little click that's sort of showing we've actually grabbed that screen. So I want to go and do a very simple process. Go and click on Get Directions, grab a process. I'm simply going to go and put in between Sydney and Melbourne. And grab that one. Got what I want to there. Click on the Get Directions button, and you're seeing a live demo here in real time, and I get my directions for that. So once I'm finished my very basic capture, I can click on the Finish button there, and it takes me to the next stage of the process and says, do you want to go and launch the editor? I'll say yes, and I go next, and it takes me to the editor. So once I get to this stage, here's where I'm able to go and add some additional value in there for each of those steps in the process. I'm able to put in maybe more specific detail. So enter your required location, and you can go and click on other frames and do the same thing. So not actually, I'm not going to go through the whole process, but essentially I'm going to grab that now, do a save, do a close, and then keep following the bouncing ball. I've managed to follow myself right out of there. So the next step in that process would have been to go and actually do a little preview of the process. No, I'm still there. I'm still alive. So go next. build a little preview, so it gives me a very quick little example of what I actually have built there, just so I can quickly check it prior to moving on to the next steps. Let's give it a second there. Okay, so it's going to step me through that process, and you can see there those steps that I've grabbed. Simply just capture those and take me through that very simple process. Back to you, David.
James, that's great. I think what's really really good about that feature is it does enable, previously it was difficult to get subject matter experts or those that hadn't been trained up in UPK, and we've seen a number of our customer sites, we get asked a lot to do some UPK light training, as we'd almost term it, where we're just teaching people how to capture. We're not really teaching them to do much more with the developer tool. So I think this is a really great enhancement to the UPK suite, and it is giving us the opportunity to get that engagement early on in the cycle using the capture. And there shouldn't be any fear of using UPK. It should be just a natural part of what is done to record those knowledge assets, and get away from creating those reams of documents that are really just there because to some extent we want to keep tabs on, and we want to show the deliverables that we're producing at the various points. So look, I'm a big fan of the record it. I think by having that wizard feature to step people through, we're going to be able to get much more value out of that tool. So now I'm going to move on to the next feature that we want to have a look in action, and this is the tested mode. And this again is another great innovation that Oracle has put into the new version of UPK. And this, rather than in the past we've been able to output test scripts that can then be used in either Word format or in another testing system. But now with this tested mode, we're able to get the actual users and to perform the testing in the UPK environment. We can capture that knowledge along the way. So I'm going to hand it back over to James now to take us through that feature very quickly.
Thanks, David, and I'm back here now. So it's really just to frame this a little bit more. So previously in UPK you were able to output a test document. You're also able to output a test file, which you can then use with other testing systems. But now with version 11.1, we've also brought out the tested. So it is really as part of those interactive modes. And again, just a quick little 2-second run through. So UPK can present or output different interactive modes. There's one there called See It, able to sort of sit back and watch a movie. The Try It gives you a bit of practice simulation. The Node, you start being assessed on it. And the Do It, you can do a little cheat sheet or a little print guide to help you, a step-by-step guide. But the one I want to show you today is really the tested. And what I've got here is a small bit of content there. I might have had a bit of a process flow associated with it. But if I launch the tested mode, what it'll do is bring up a window, which is going to stop me playing right now. Sorry about that. These things always happen with live systems, don't they, David? And we'll try that there. No, we're not going to get that going. No, we're having a little technical issue there. But what that would do would take me through a step-by-step guide on the screen to really guide me through that process to enable me to, to really take me through and capture each step of my process to say, well, this process passed, this one failed. I can put additional notes in there, and I can also record if there's a specific bug associated with it. It guides me through the testing process and then gives me a very nice detailed report at the end of it. So, David, back to you.
James, I had muted myself there.
You there, David?
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Yep. So, I've got some backup slides we can use, James, if you want to step through some of those. And I'll be right with you. I'm just going to grab that back from James. Okay, James, are you still there?
I am.
Ah, great.
Right, so thanks for that.
Do you want to walk through?
Backups.
Yeah, I've got some slide backups.
Yeah, I'll walk through that.
So,
that's all we have backups. All right, so essentially I've gone through, if you can go back one step there, so you've got a process navigating through, you click on the test button there, you've got some other metadata or information you can put there associated with the test. Next slide please, David. And you go next, and what you do is you're essentially going through the actual test process itself. Now those buttons on the bottom there, it's once I mentioned before, you've got your little green arrow there as a tick button, so yes, that will tick the step in the process passed. You've got your red cross, which said it actually didn't pass, it failed. You've got a skip button. You've got the additional ability to enter in notes, so against each of those steps in the test process you can put in, very detailed notes if you need to, things that work, things that didn't work well, and all that will come out in the end report. And then if we do happen to hit an issue, you can hit the bug there, the pretty little icon of the bug there, and that'll then capture, and I guess the useful part there is actually captures each of your steps that you actually clicked on to reproduce that error, and then that also forms part of your testing document. And then once you've gone through the actual testing process, next slide please, as I said, along the way you can add notes, but you've also on the right hand side there, you've got a little panel that gives you your little summary of the actual process you've tested, and you can click on the View Detailed Report. Next slide please, David. And you get a report there that actually highlights each of those steps there, and where the notes associated with each of those steps would come out on that report, and you can then print it off and give it off to someone in the development area if you need to. That's another example of it. Okay.
Great. All right. Well, sorry we couldn't show you those outputs that worked in our little rehearsal this morning, guys. But unfortunately, the Murphy's Law kicked in there. But look, what we really like about this tested mode is it's really encouraging more customers to use UPK for test phases. We've got a recent customer we've been working with who actually purchased UPK solely for the purpose of using it for the test phase, which I think's quite interesting, because I don't think I've seen UPK being explicitly purchased for that purpose in the past. So we're already seeing some take up from your peers and some appreciation of what value that's adding. And what it's doing is it's enabling us to get away from having systems experts doing the testing, and this is quite often one of the challenges in really maximising user adoption is we don't use real users until as late in the piece as we possibly can, because we feel like we've got to train them up into how to use the system before we can get them to conduct any testing. So to have business reps doing any of the unit testing or system integration testing or those phases is typically not done. So I think what this enables us to do is to move towards using those sorts of resources in earlier phases of the testing phase of a project, and it's because you can guide the users more effectively using the tools in UPK. And the other thing that's I think is really good too is because you saw that there's fields for capturing notes along the way. Those are great to give to the project team for defect resolution, but they're equally important too for some of the experience from users that may not actually be a fault of the software, so not a defect as such, but it may be things to watch out for that someone performing the testing can do. Put it into the system in UPK, and we can actually use that object in other components, be it the user documentation, be it in some of the training materials as additional knowledge that can be imparted in those contexts. So I think that's also something that we're seeing some real interest in from the customers that we work with. Okay, the last section that we wanted to, the last feature I wanted to cover off today is one that is brought into the fold, the UPK fold, through the Professional Edition that you've had access to in version 11, version 11.1. Again, we're working with a number of existing UPK customers to upgrade from standard versions to professional versions, and it's this feature that is really one of the drivers for doing that. What you're able to do is to build and deploy more roles-based learning paths. So those that have used the tool in the past, and it comes out of the Oracle fold. You'll know that it's a great way to enable that self-service learning. It's to get the users to actually self-help and get access to the material that they want and run a program. It's then able to be measured. We can do some assessments and track the course completions and proficiencies, and then report and track that so that we can measure how well we've done in terms of readying the user base for the new software before it's launched, and ensuring that we can see if we've covered off all of the material that we need to before we can hit the button on Go Live. And because it's a part of the UPK solution, it's quite a low-cost deployment. The amount of effort it is put into trying to take content out of UPK and put it into other formats or learning management systems. This is a really great way now to encompass it, in one place and have it deployed out to the ad hoc user much more effectively. So what I'm going to do is get James now to show us. Take us on a quick tour of Knowledge Centre. So we'll cross our fingers, James, and hopefully we'll get this one working.
Check that's alive. Just waiting for my screen handover. So Knowledge Centre, or UPK Professional, is really made up of two components. It's made up of the UPK standard, which is the developer component, plus the Knowledge Centre. So what we're looking at here is the Knowledge Centre, and as David said there, it is really a way of really deploying your role-based prescriptive training. So if you've got a certain role or function, let's say a finance role, you want to deploy training out for that particular role, you can actually gather that material together, publish it out, and then deploy it out in a very role-based prescriptive. So in other words, you must complete Unit 1 before you can complete Unit 2. And it can take you down a whole learning path, and that's really the point. So here we're looking at the actual little internal Knowledge Centre itself. It's got the ability on the left-hand side there, a bit of menu navigation there. If I click on my knowledge path there, what it tells me there, I've actually got a number of different courses available to me. If I clicked on one of those courses there, it takes me down into the actual topic itself. Now again, I might have a number of different topics in there, and again, as I said before, you might have that you have to complete topic 1 before you can go to topic 2, but it's really a way of streaming or guiding someone down a learning path. Let's go back to home, and navigation here is actually very straightforward. The little home button there takes you home, the back button takes you back, etc. The other component that Knowledge Centre provides, and I think it's becoming increasingly important, is really the ability now to be able to very comprehensively give you a set of information to give you a really good idea exactly how your users are going with their knowledge adoption, knowledge courses. So it really tells people up in the project management area or in the high levels, if they really want to say, right, we're going to go live with the project, how ready are the users? We can actually run out very comprehensive set of reports to say that, well, yes, this people in this part of the world are actually ready and they've done all the training and they're all passed it, etc. Or things haven't gone quite so well, and we might have a bit of a red flag there. So it really starts to give you that sort of granular detail around the people's use and adoption of the content. So the other things that you can have here is really, I guess, a little feature here is ask an expert, and there's also an answer a question. So that is really a means by which you can connect the end user who's consuming the content to or with a subject matter expert in the organization. So it's really as I'm going through the content, I can ask a question, it'll be routed off to the person who's been nominated as the expert in the area. They'll then get an email or be able to answer a question saying this is how you do it or this is the answer, and along the way it can also provide a little feedback loop as well. But this really gives an extra benefit of being able to link the end user consuming the content with a subject matter expert in the organization. I think, David, back to you. You're on mute there,
Yep,
David.
thank you. Thanks very much, James. I think that's a really great feature, and what we're seeing in terms of some of our clients using Knowledge Centre. We've got several who've gone through the process of upgrading and taking on that new feature, and are using it really effectively to deploy training. And I think one of the key distinctions there is you can start to distinguish between the different types of content you push out to your end users. And using Knowledge Centre, we can deploy training as role-based, so we can have people access different training materials based on their job role and things that are going to be important for them, whilst also deploying functional-based user support, and have that deployed either as help or through other mechanisms to get the help on performing a function or a task in the system. So I think that's a good way of distinguishing and a good way of leveraging Knowledge Centre as a way to get that information out to the end user. The other thing, using some of the reporting that you saw there is great data to help steering committees when they're making their go, no-go decisions. Quite often we're not able to get good empirical data to that process, and I know from personal experience there have been a number of projects I've worked on over the years that probably shouldn't have gone live based on how ready the business was to accept the solution, and because the data wasn't there to really put up a strong argument as to why they should delay go live, they've pushed forward and had a bit of a catastrophe as a result. So I think being able to say, let's look at the level of training uptake that's occurred. Let's look at some other factors that we can deduce in terms of how ready the organisation is. We can help the steering committee to use that as a gateway to make sound decisions about moving forward. And then the third real business driver for using Knowledge Centre we're seeing is if there isn't an LMS in place, or the learning management system that the client's using is perhaps not the most appropriate vehicle to get this sort of learning material out to the user audience. We're now able to use these features within Knowledge Centre as an LMS and track compliance and look at completion records. And I think lastly, that Ask an Expert feature starts to get into the area of social learning, where we're actually building the knowledge base as we go. We haven't just got a static knowledge base that is derived from what was done on the project. We can start to build that, capture that interaction from Ask an Expert and build that knowledge out, make it available out there to users as well. So I think that's to me that's really the key ways in which we're seeing our customers really get the value out of upgrading to Pro to take advantage of Knowledge Centre. So I hope that's given you some useful information that you may not have had. What we've endeavoured to do today is to connect you with some new features of UPK, but also to challenge your thinking about what UPK delivers as a suite in its own right. And in doing so, we've asked you to think about user adoption as being more than just go live training. We've asked you to think about UPK particularly being used to capture that knowledge throughout the project life cycle. and then if we can think about it that way, then looking at how you can use some of these features like the recording wizard, the test it mode, knowledge center, and see how you can deliver more business value for your implementation by taking advantage of those. I think the last point I'd make too is it's very important to know your limitations. We can't all be experts at all elements of the tools that we use, and there are some great features in there like the recording wizard that enable non-UPK experts to really interact with the tool and add value. It's also important to do that with a really strong strategy and with the right level of expertise to ensure that you're creating that content library and producing the various different outputs that are going to deliver the outcomes for your project and for your implementation. So we'd obviously encourage you to have a chat to us as well. We've obviously worked on a lot of projects. We are currently working with all of these features and have got some really good practical experience that we're very willing to share with you guys. So thanks everyone for your time. Thanks James, I really appreciate you. It was difficult doing that from Melbourne. You're in Melbourne, I was in Sydney, but it's been great to have been able to bring that together, and we'll look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thanks everyone.